Hi class, Dr. Searcy here with the Chapter 15 lecture notes for the textbook. As you can see, the title of the chapter is Correlation. And I suppose before we get into what correlation is, let's just kind of think about where we've been over the past few chapters, right? Thinking back to about chapter 5, we first started learning about the z-score. And then moving on to about chapter 9, we started to learn about the t-score. And then in the past chapter, we went over novas and we learned about the f-score. One thing that I want you just to note with all three of these different kinds of measures is that all three were used to determine whether a difference existed between two different groups, right? That was the whole point. We would calculate some z or t or f, and we would compare that calculated value to some critical value. And if either of these were greater than the critical value, then we said that there was a significant difference between these groups where we'd done something to one group and done something else to another group. Okay, so in this chapter, we're going to start to depart from that type of analysis. In this chapter, when we talk about correlation, now we're not talking about doing anything to anyone, right? This is going back to that non-experimental type of study that we looked at the beginning of the semester. In a correlational analysis, basically what can happen here is a researcher can go up to a participant or a group of participants and ask them questions. And so that's where we'll begin, right? A researcher is asking some participants some questions. Now they're going to use correlation to analyze what they got from the participants. Okay, so to begin with, let's think about what is a correlation, right? So I'm going to offer a correlation definition to you. It is a measure of whether two variables are related. So in this definition, one thing that you really want to remember is what a variable is. Remember that a variable is anything in the world that exists that is measurable, right? That you can count or that you can measure. So what do researchers do? They look to see if one variable, right, it's what its measure or its count might be, if that's related to the measure or the count of another variable. Okay, so kind of an abstract concept. So I want to try and explain that by using an example. To begin with, let me just note that this was an example that I actually worked on as a graduate student when I was working on my PhD. It was about 2005, and there were new things happening in the world. One of the biggest things, though, was that the internet was really starting to take off, right? More and more people were becoming internet savvy. Just about everyone had an email account about that time. Facebook was just starting, right? The precursor to that, MySpace, was starting to fall off. And now everyone was starting to go to this Facebook site and get accounts there. Another big thing that was happening in 2005 with regard to the internet. So I'm going to get a little R-rated for you here. So please brace yourself. But another thing that was happening with regard to the internet that we can say is R-rated is that there was an extreme increase in the amount of pornography use by individuals, right? Before 2005 or shortly before that, if someone wanted to use pornography to, do whatever, they had to go to a store. They generally had to buy a magazine or a videotape. But now in 2005, with the internet, people didn't have to do that anymore, right? If they wanted to consume pornography, they could just jump on their computer anonymously and log into or visit a website. Okay, so I became interested in this phenomena in 2005 as a graduate student. And by the way, I was working with a professor in graduate school that was one of the authors of the article that you're supposed to read for your extra credit assignment. The professor's name was Lester Wright. And in 2005, he was a clinical psychologist whose expertise was in sexual deviance, right? Deviance is like when you do things that are just different, away from the mean or the average. And so that was his research area. One day, him and I were talking, and we got into this conversation about how there was this increase in pornography use, and we started to wonder about its effects on society. I came up with a particular question, and he thought it was interesting. So we both decided to pursue it and investigate it. And as it turns out, the best analysis to use on this was a correlation. Okay, so what is this example? The example was we recruited participants to be in a study. Here I'm noting this in this column participant numbers, right? So here is participant 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't necessarily need a sum there, but that's all this column is, right? So in truth, here I'm just showing the results that I got from 4 participants. But in truth, I recruited 30 participants, right? Because you want to have at least 30 in your sample. But just for the purpose of explaining this, I'm going to say that I recruited 4 participants in my study. What I did was I asked each participant in the study 2 questions. And I wanted to see if their answers were related to each other. That's where we're going with this correlation here. So what was the first question? The first question, represented here with the variable x, was what I refer to as OSA. What does OSA stand for? It stands for online sexual activity. Basically, what I asked participants was for them to think about how much time they had engaged in online sexual activity over the past week in terms of hours, right? And I called it online sexual activity because I was referring to like using internet pornography, but there's different varieties of internet pornography. So this was kind of like my umbrella term for that. So let's look at some of the answers that I got. Participant number 1 said that in the last week, he had engaged in 9 hours of online sexual activity. Participant 2, 1 hour in the last week. Participant 3 engaged in 7 hours of online sexual activity over the past week. And participant 4 said, I don't engage in online sexual activity at all. Now, each of these individuals was a romantic partner in a relationship. And so this is what I was looking at investigating. I wanted to see, with regard to measuring 2 variables, how would this variable, right, online pornography use, how would it affect, or would it be related to a second variable? That second variable is this y variable. Here, I'm going to call it FWP. What's FWP? Fights with partner. Really what I'm after with this is a measure of relationship satisfaction, right? How well does each individual, each participant, get along with their romantic partner? And so to measure that, I asked them, in the y variable, how many times in the past week do you recall fighting with your romantic partner? Right, and so I got these answers. Participant number 1 said, I fought with my partner 6 times. Participant 2 fought 2 times. Participant 3 fought 3 times with their partner. And participant number 4 fought 3 times. Okay, participant 3 fought 9 times. Participant number 4 fought 3 times. Okay. So, let's think about whether it looks like there is a relationship, just as we observe these two numbers. I am going to suggest to you that there is a relationship between this variable and this variable. The way you can see that relationship is if a number in this column for a participant is high, then the number for that same participant in the other column is also high. Similarly, if a number in one column for a participant is low, the number for the other column for that same participant is also low. So what are we seeing with these results? Well, we're saying participant 1 was telling us they use online sexual activity a lot and they also fight with their partner a lot. Participant number 2 is saying, I don't use it very much and I don't fight with my partner very much. Participant number 3 was again, lots of pornography use and lots of fighting. Participant number 4 was saying, no pornography use and really hardly any fighting, right? So that's this relationship that we're talking about. What we're looking at here is this relationship between how much time someone spends using pornography and how much time they spend fighting with their partner. So it looks like these two variables are related to each other. But of course, this is a statistics course, so we have to use a statistical measure to assess whether there actually is a relationship or not. By the way, the name of the measure that we're going to use is referred to, so I'm just going to write, we'll call it the statistic that we're going to use. The name of it is called Pearson. Oh, I can't believe my pen is dying. Okay. Hang on, class.